Prime Minister has been rightly angry about what has happened in the prison crisis, which we know the background to. We haven't built enough prison places, and this crisis has been looming since the Labour government took office. We first of all have said that we're going to build more prisons, but we have an immediate problem where we have prison overcrowding. The Prime Minister has asked the Justice Secretary now to look at the issue again, to come to Parliament in September to ensure that we can do everything we possibly can to keep the most serious offenders in prison. That may mean looking at speeding up foreign nationals from being deported and removed from the country in our prisons, looking at women prisoners and the sentences they have, but also looking at these indefinite sentences that are from previous decades and looking at if there is a way in which that we can review those cases.
Rayner confronted on BBC Breakfast this morning on the PC Harper case and what prisoners are going to be released early on Labour's new scheme. And they recently came out with a statement. Andy Burnham basically now is saying we need to delay this and actually take a second look at this Harper case due to, let's be real, the backlash, right? If no one was speaking about this, if no one confronted them about this, then they would have most likely gone on with their plan. But because of the 900,000 petition signatures, and not just that, but police officers literally annoyed, angry, fuming with this situation, they've had to had a second look at it, and now Andy Burnham is looking like this some sort of hero when in reality he was going to release prisoners early. Now he's setting it back. Now he's having a second think about the situation because he's seen the backlash that is commencing.
Looking specifically at the case of PC Harper, which I know is, we're talking about every day on the programme at the moment. It's a hugely emotional case that everybody is paying attention to. What are the options for those two men, the two men who are due to be released as we're talking now? They're due to be released in January.
Well, again, the trauma that PC Harper's family have been through and other victims who are watching this crisis unfold in our prisons is unacceptable. And the Prime Minister has said those serious offenders, like the ones that killed PC Harper, he doesn't want to see them released early, and that he's tasked the Justice Secretary to look at that and to come to Parliament in September so that we could do everything we possibly can to stop that from happening. And the Prime Minister acknowledges and understands the anger that people are feeling at the moment because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in.
The Labour government, and not just the Labour government, but the United Kingdom, Great Britain, has a massive problem in these prisons. There are people committing crimes. There are no spaces in these prisons. In their scheme, they were supposedly supposed to let prisoners do their sentences and not do as long as what they needed to do if they are prisoners that haven't committed as serious crimes. PC Harper case shown that there was a dent in this system. Perpetrators involved in that situation was going to be let out early. People got onto that. I'm sure you've seen everything about it, and now Angela Rayner has responded to this, confronted by BBC interviewers, and she seems to believe as well that this is not right, which is why they're having a second look.
We spoke to Alex Norris, the Justice Secretary, last week, and he apologised to PC Harper's family for the distress and apologised that nothing could be done to change the situation at that time. Now, this is now, we are a week further on from that almost. This whole thing is adding to the distress of the family. Can you give us any idea, I know you've talked about September, can you give us any idea when we might hear any announcement or any change for that particular case?
Well, our Justice Secretary, Alex, was absolutely right to apologise and to recognise. And I think the Prime Minister is also right to recognise the anger and the trauma that PC Harper and other victims of appalling crimes that have happened to them and their family, what these circumstances are subjecting them to. And the Prime Minister is acutely aware of that, but he's not accepting that there is nothing we can do about that. He wants the Justice Secretary to continue more work to look at, as I say, other prisoners, other ways to which we can ensure that those that are released are tagged, that are surveillance, that are stronger restrictions on them when they're outside of prison, but also about what prisoners are released as part of this immediate crisis that we find ourselves in. But to reassure your viewers that we are going to be building those prison places that we need in this country that the previous government failed to deliver. And that is why we've ended up in these circumstances. But the Prime Minister does acknowledge the anger and the rage and the upset and the trauma that that's putting on victims and PC Harper's family in particular.
Yeah, you talk about the rage, and we know that the petition to prevent their early release is now at around 900,000 signatures. We've heard from a serving police officer who attended the scene after the death of PC Harper, saying that the current situation is spitting in the faces of police officers by potentially releasing his killers early. There's a huge amount of distress about this. Could you try and explain to us what's different, what changed yesterday? We've known about this for some time, but clearly something changed last night with that statement coming out. You talk us through what happened in the hours leading up to that statement to change the government's mind.
Well, the Prime Minister's been really clear that he doesn't accept that we allow the most dangerous offenders out early on release. And, you know, the people that put themselves at risk every day serving our public through our police force and other vital emergency services, the appalling situation that led to PC Harper's murder, killing on the streets. He understands the rage and the anger, and he's not accepting that we can't do anything to prevent that. And he's been really clear that he wants the Justice Secretary to look at that again. And I've given you some examples of where the government is looking at to ensure that we don't end up in a situation where we cannot arrest people who have committed appalling crimes, because we don't have the capacity in our prisons, but also that we're not allowing people who have done these horrendous crimes to people who are serving the British public and who deserve to see these perpetrators behind bars and to pay for what they've done.
Why would you even need a second look in the first place is my questioning for her. Why was you even going to let this happen anyway? Why did this have to come out to the press, and why did it take for so much backlash? Police officers coming out, public coming out, online social media, responses, everyone outraged about this situation for you to think, actually, we need to have a second look about this because this isn't right. Why didn't you look at this originally? Because let's be real, because there's been so much talking about this case, this is why they're going to have a second look. Labour government have a serious problem with these prisons. They are saying that they need to rebuild these prisons as quickly as possible, and that's their plan. Nigel Farage came out and says dangerous criminals must serve the entirety of their sentences. Reform has a plan to keep prisoners behind bars. He also says reform will send prisoners back to their countries of origin. If they refuse, they will be sent to a third-party country like El Salvador.
We send people back to their country of origin, so it needs a phone call with Eddie Rama from Albania, etc. And if they refuse, we then send foreign national offenders off to third parties. Kosovo is perhaps one good example currently being used by Sweden. And we are organising a trip to El Salvador. And by the way, not all of the prisons, the cages that you've seen on television, and Lee Addison and Vanessa Frake, the former prison governor, they will both be visiting El Salvador soon. To house a foreign national offender in El Salvador will be half the cost of housing a foreign national offender in this country, and will give us more prison spaces.
What do you think about this Angela Rayner interview and Nigel Farage's response? Let me know your thoughts on this, guys, in the comment section down below.